I had such a good time entering the world of Lunaria, and I cannot wait to jump back in. Hello everyone, welcome back to A Fictional Escapist. My name is Chris and today's video is the Moroda book review. Moroda is L.L. Macrae's debut novel, which has been revamped a little bit with a new cover and some edits in a second edition. So just a note on that, if you are looking for a copy of this book, make sure you're going for this cover. This is the second edition of the book. Moroda had basically everything that I look for in a debut fantasy novel. We had an introduction to an interesting cast of characters, we had an interesting magic system that differed between the different creatures that we were dealing with, political rivalries, and of course some personal growth, all within book one. And I was blown away by how immersive and expansive this world was, only within 400 pages, but we'll get to why that is in just a moment. So Moroda is, or was, a goldstone, someone who's waited on hand and foot. They don't need to ask for anything, sort of born with a silver spoon in your mouth, if you will. That was until her father passed away, leaving his daughters with several debts that needed to be repaid. Moroda suddenly finds herself stripped of a life of privilege and being outspoken in a jail cell once she starts to find her feet and a backbone. So essentially the reader starts in this jail cell with Moroda, and we start meeting different characters that will become part of the story later on. So Moroda's in the jail cell, she's down to her last possessions, and her sister Erin comes in and breaks her out, but Moroda, being the good person that she is, also breaks out the Sky Pirate and also Sapora, which I can't remember what that creature is called, but it starts with a V and they can basically shift into a snake, which is very cool. People don't like them, they're scared of them, but being a kind-hearted person, she doesn't want to leave one person in this jail cell, so she also breaks out the scary snake creature, and they all sort of run out into the streets. Soon after the jailbreak, if you will, it becomes apparent that something is stirring in Lunaria, something is wrong, and we can sort of get a sense of this because the usual peaceful dragons are stirring and not being so peaceful anymore. Dragons in this story are basically revered like gods. People leave the dragons alone, dragons leave the people alone, but at the moment something is afoot and the dragons are not happy. When a young dragon then turns on her hometown, Moroda has to find a way to keep her sister safe. Wanting to be safe and wanting to get out and have a bit of a life adventure, Moroda decides to jump on board the airship with Amara the Sky Pirate and a motley crew of other beings. It becomes apparent there is much more to the dragon's upset than really meets the eye. There are certain creatures that believe they have been wronged. They're called the Aurelians, I believe that's how you pronounce it, and they basically want to take their power back. The Aurelians can manipulate sort of wind and air, I believe is how it's sort of presented in the book, and they can conjure up storms, and they're trying to steal the dragon's essence to become more powerful, to be able to basically take back the world for themselves. And Moroda and crew sort of figure this out and try to put a stop to it. And throughout the book, it's about these characters working together to try and put a stop to the Aurelians stealing the essence of one of the ancient dragons to really be able to mess up the entire world, which we do not want. And of course there's character development and world building and stuff that happens along the way, but I can't give too much without going into spoiler territory. So that is the general premise. Like I said, we're looking at adventure fantasy mixed with high fantasy. We've got a whole bunch of fantastical creatures in the mix there, and we're trying to stop a big bad from taking over the world. A world which, by the way, is absolutely fascinating. I want to go into a couple of standouts for me in this book and why I enjoyed it so much. The first one is going to be the world building. Now, I'm finding out that I am impartial to an airship. I really enjoy this mode of travel within a fantasy book, and I think that's why I quite like steampunk fantasy as well, but it's because we get to experience a lot more of the world from a bird's eye view. So even if we're just getting snippets where we get to travel over a wide range of lands, and maybe we stop in different parts of the world like we do in this book, because we're traveling by ship, we get to experience multiple parts along this map. And I'll put a picture of the map up here because it is quite big. It is quite a big world that we're dealing with within 400 pages, and we get to experience different parts of this world. We stop in 4 or 5 places, and of our characters, we see a lot of their homelands, and we get the histories of their homelands and why maybe they don't get on with one another as well, which I thought was excellent for a debut novel to have a world that is that rich, to have our characters have backstories and histories within 400 pages was really, really well done. And I can't wait to experience more of this world, and to, even if we don't go anywhere new, and I don't know, I haven't continued on with the series just yet, but learn more of the complexities of these different spaces that we've got a taste of in the first book. So, you know, within book 1, we've already seen a selection of these countries and these areas that our characters have grown up on. We get a taste of each of their upbringing and maybe why they think the way that they do, which I thought was really, really good. Doing it this way also made it fast-paced. Nothing felt forced. We were in one location, we learnt about that location, we had a bit of banter, we moved on to the next location, and we sort of got the pieces of the puzzle to be put together as to why they are connected. It's a really fascinating way to explore a world. The other thing that I want to point out here is the characters and just the sheer variety of character that we had in this book. For book 1, it takes a lot, in my opinion, for an author to introduce, 5 or 6 main characters and have each of them be completely separate, to interact with one another in different ways and get the group dynamic happening, but also be able to articulate that in a way where they do feel like individual people. Not only were they individual people, they were individual species in this book, and I thought it was done very, very well. So each character had their own upbringing, and history, like I said in the world building section, and they stuck to those goals and those belief systems, and they sometimes clashed in those beliefs, which was very interesting as an outsider to experience those conversations and watch them have to learn to compromise in thought patterns as to move the story forward and the plot forward. So we had a very intriguing set of characters and how they all worked together. The group dynamic was believable, it was turbulent at times, but they had to figure it out and put their differences aside to try and save the world. Now, the one thing I will say for the characters is if you get annoyed by a Mary Sue type character, I did find Moroda to be pretty much good at everything as soon as she was learning to do it. She was probably my least favourite character in the book, was the main character, but I had such a good time with the other side characters, and each of these books has a different name of a different character, so I'm hoping we get to sort of deep dive into those characters. And book 2 is called Palom, which was my favourite character in book 1, so I'm looking forward to seeing more of Palom in the second book. I'll put a picture of it up here. But if you're not a fan of the Mary Sue, it may not work for you, but just be aware that the other characters are so entertaining that you'll be able to stick through it. The plot in itself, fairly simplistic, very forgivable for a debut novel, but I believe that it sets itself up to be something much, much bigger and broader in the scope of an entire series. This is a 6-book series, of which 4 are currently out, so who knows where this could go. But in terms of book 1, it gave the author the ability to open up the world and the characters. That being said, if you are a world building or character driven reader, you're going to have a really good time with Moroda. The writing is very approachable and fast paced, and you'll get through this one in no time and have a good adventure along the way. Those are my thoughts on Moroda by L.L. Macrae. Have you read this one? What do you think? Are you going to pick this one up? Let me know in those comments below. If you like the content, give it one of them. If you want to see more of it, then click subscribe at your will, and I will catch you in the next video. Ciao.